There's a particular kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from being unable to say no. It's the weight of carrying other people's expectations, emotions, and demands as if they were your own, until you forget where you end and they begin. When I first picked up Boundaries by Cloud John Townsend, I wasn't looking for permission to set boundaries. I was trying to understand why I couldn't, why saying no felt like betrayal, why personal boundaries seemed selfish, why every attempt to set healthy boundaries left me drowning in guilt. The book promised something I desperately needed but didn't fully believe was possible: a way to set boundaries without losing the people I loved, and without losing myself in the process. What I didn't expect was how deeply Cloud and Townsend would challenge not just my behavior, but my entire understanding of love, responsibility, and what it means to be a good person. This wasn't a book about building walls or becoming distant. It was about learning to define boundaries between my life and the lives of others. It taught me that emotional boundaries aren't barriers to connection. They're the foundation of it. They argued something I'd never considered. Boundaries in relationships aren't selfish, they're sacred. And the inability to enforce boundaries isn't generosity, it's the slow erosion of self. I also didn't expect how much internal boundaries, those we set with our own thoughts, habits, and impulses, would matter just as much as the ones we set with others. The metaphor that really struck me was the idea that your life is a piece of property, and you are responsible for everything within its borders. Cloud and Townsend weren't speaking metaphorically, they meant it. You own your feelings, your choices, your time, your body, your energy. And when you fail to set boundaries, you're essentially handing the deed to someone else. I found that image both liberating and terrifying. Liberating because it meant I had the right to reclaim what was mine. Terrifying because it meant I'd been giving it away for years, believing that's what love required. One thing I appreciated was how gently the authors dismantled my misconceptions. They didn't shame me for my lack of boundaries. They explained it. They showed how many of us grow up in environments where boundaries are ignored, punished, or weaponized, where saying no is met with guilt, criticism, or withdrawal. We learn that our worth is tied to how much we can endure, how much we can give, how little we can need, and we become adults who don't know how to set boundaries because we were never taught that we had the right to. But the book doesn't stop at explaining the problem. It moves with clarity into what healthy boundaries actually look like. Cloud and Townsend walk through family, marriage, work, friendships, even our relationship with ourselves, and show how boundaries act as both protection and connection. They explain that enforcing boundaries isn't rejection, it's clarity. It's saying, I love you, but I'm not responsible for your happiness. I care about you, but I can't carry what isn't mine. What shifted my perspective most was their argument that boundary problems are ultimately love problems. We avoid setting boundaries because we're afraid of abandonment, rejection, being seen as difficult or ungrateful. But Cloud and Townsend suggest that relationships without boundaries aren't love. They're enmeshment, codependency, or control dressed up as care. Real love requires two whole people, and wholeness requires limits. The authors also challenge us to build internal boundaries. It's not just about saying no to others. It's about saying no to the parts of ourselves that sabotage us. The people-pleasing, the guilt, the self-criticism, the habits that drain our energy. They reminded me that I'm not only responsible for myself, I'm responsible to myself, that I owe myself the same protection, patience, and respect I readily give to others. If boundaries could transform one thing in your life, it would be this: the quiet certainty that you have the right to take up space, to protect your energy, to say no without apology, to build a life that reflects your values, not everyone else's demands. Imagine waking up without that dread of disappointing someone, without the fear of being too much or not enough. Imagine relationships where honesty replaces resentment, where closeness doesn't require self-erasure, where you can be fully present because you're no longer running on empty. That's what Cloud and Townsend offer, not a conflict-free life, but a life where conflict becomes a path to deeper connection instead of a reason to collapse your boundaries all over again. This book won't make boundary setting easy, but it makes it possible, and sometimes possibility is enough to begin. If this resonated with you, like and subscribe to Well-Read Club for more book breakdowns and mindset insights to help you live with more clarity and intention.